Today we're going to try to take advantage of a very a unique day. It's pouring rain outside, and I'm not going to be able to paint at all, so I'm going to try to take advantage of that and do some of the things that will not require painting. Now, one of the things I still have to do, I had fit the windshield up onto the fairing that we're not going to use, and obviously I'm going to see if that fairing if that windshield fits the other fairing. Now, I've had several different windshields on this bike. I've actually had several different windshields on most of the bikes. And we just changed this windshield out recently so we could shoot a little bit nicer video, and that turned out to be a real upgrade. When I did the original restoration on the Kawasaki, what I had was I had two windshields to work with. I made one high, one low. It turned out I liked this one better, but one of the things I would like to have at this point in the game, if I could find one on eBay or something, is a clear one. I don't have a clear one. So what I did during the restoration, I painted both windshields so I could switch them out. Just a couple of screws to switch them out. And that's pretty much what I'd like to do with this restoration. But the problem is, this fairing and the one that we're going to be using, now that we know we're not going to use this one, are just a little bit different, and I don't know how that's going to work out. So the thing I always think is important on any restoration, any rebuild, is to just stay flexible, because sometimes it changes in a minute and you don't know which way you're going to go, but ultimately it all seems to work out. It's a little more complex than what I really originally thought here for a couple of reasons. First off, this part, when this bike has been crashed, and this part was bent, I rebent it back. It's going to need some more bending, I'm sure, because now that I'm getting everything, I'm trying to fine-tune it exactly right so all the body fits are right. I didn't bother to do that because originally this was just going to be a track bike. But like everything in my life, it just changes on a moment's notice. I turn around, and today was supposed to be a bright sunny day. I was thinking of doing a sand out on the fairing and wet sanding it and getting the painting. Not going to do that today. And again, one of our future upgrades for this bike is going to be to try to find a clear windshield. And we'll eventually find one. But in the meantime, we have two, and that's what I like about having spare parts for everything. It just gives you a lot of choices. Sometimes you can change one or two parts on a bike and it feels like a whole new bike. When I changed the windshield on this to the clear windshield, it just made the video that much nicer, among other things. And I thought it even looked a little nicer, so did Luciano. But anyway, it's all in the eye of the beholder anyway. So it's still raining here. I'm going to have my coffee. I've changed all the battery chargers, and there's not much painting going to happen today, so we will try to get that windshield mounted. So these are the two choices of windshield we have. We have a third one actually that's out in the garage. It's got a big giant crack in it, so that one I may have to buy another one if either one of these are not going to work the way I want them to. But again, because that fairing is just not exactly the original one, and we're dealing with the square headlight fairing and the double headlight fairing, and playing you know, Mr. Potato Head or something with these parts. But anyway, again, this is something that's worth mentioning, is on a day that it's raining, I always try to schedule the work so on a day that it's raining, I always have two choices. I could work in the shop. If it's a paintable day, that's what I'd always want to do. Or if it's raining, I have other projects that don't require painting. So we've just lucked out today that that's the way this day is going to play out. But step one is it's mandatory in this cold, damp weather. This time of year, that coffee always tastes great. As soon as I have my coffee, I'll be ready to start fitting this up. So the first thing I wanted to do is take some of this clear tape just to protect the windshield from getting scratched as much as possible while I'm doing the fitting. Otherwise, what's happened in the past when I've done this, and I'll put that around the whole perimeter, what's happened is by grinding this and moving it around and everything, I've wound up damaging the windshield, putting scratches. Of course they buff out, especially with flits, they come out nice. But if I don't have to buff this, one less thing to do. But I do want to add that layer of protection all along there. I using a either an X-Acto knife or any kind of sharp blade. I want to trim off the extra tape. It just makes it a little bit easier when I go to do the fitting. So the first thing I want to just verify to myself, and I know these belong to two different series of Yamahas, we're going to only be able to drill one set of holes. I don't want to drill a set of holes and then not be able to use it, because you'll notice if you really look close, this windshield is about an inch lower, and again, there's differences in it in where it's going to mount up here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to use it. It's going to require a little fitting. It's going to require a little bit of playing around with. But if we can't use this for whatever reason, then this one I will just put a new fresh clear finish on it, and then I can use all the holes are already drilled. So, well, again, but my first choice would be this because it's a little bit lower, and because it's clear, it'll make for, I think, for better video. Hey, you might think doing all these fittings, it would be a lot easier than it really is. In real life, it's not that easy. And of course, the answer would be to buy the exact windshield that fits. And we don't have that choice right now. But it looks like, now, and I'm hoping this is going to work. Yeah, I'm thinking this is close enough, and I'll just be able to trim off the back, oh, a slight amount anyway. But the first step on this is going to be to try to, well, I'm going to try to tape it in position with Gorilla Tape just to see if I have, that I haven't run into something that I haven't anticipated. But you always do. Now after taping this in place, I'm feeling like maybe I can use this. So the first step is going to be to accurately line up the front two holes, making sure that in the back I have the same amount on both sides overage, and I have a clear, a gasket area, I guess is the right word. And I got to adjust this back just a little bit. And then I want to spot the front two holes, put the two front bolts in very, very soft, and then see if I can get the back to line up exactly the way I want. This looks real easy, not that easy. Okay, this is a Dremel burr that'll burn its way through at exactly the right diameter. We've marked very, very carefully, and boy, I'm really hoping I can use this clear windshield. But now in the worst of all worlds, I'm already starting to plan my escape route. If this doesn't work, I'll have to fill these holes in. But let's hope for the best. And what I never want to do is use a drill. I always want to use a burr and just burn my way through. And by doing it that way, you don't run the risk that that drill is going to catch in a fairing and take a big chunk out. A part of this restoration is I've bought enough hardware. I'm going to replace every bit of hardware with stainless steel. It'll never rust, never corrode, and have all the appropriate washers and lock washers. And the whole thing is going to cost me about 10 bucks to replace the hardware on the whole motorcycle. Bolt Depot, by the way, Bolt Depot. And see when you burn those holes through how nice and neat they come out. And you can get a burr for a Dremel tool for about $3 in Lowe's. Okay, I've got the first two bolts in place. Now it's going to be a question of, I want to get this lined up here. I want to spot these holes. I'm going to get the alignment out at the end. I'm going to have to trim that off if this works out. I want to get the next two bolts in, just hand tight now, no Allen wrenches or anything. And then once those two are in, I'm working my way from that side of the windshield out. And especially if you tend to over tighten things, don't over tighten these bolts. And that's how, I'm sure that's how. Not only part of the thing is that the frame that holds this was cocked to one side at one time, that also you run the risk you start a crack and then it works its way out into the windshield, and then you're out 50 bucks for another windshield. I've Frujewskiized a lot of, I know you don't know what that word means, a lot of these windshields on a lot of these restorations. I may as well mark them both. but I'm only going to drill and put these 2 bolts in next. I'm not going to never try to do the back ones first and then work to the front. You wind up twisting everything. Now, it may sound like overkill, but when you're doing a custom installation, it's even better to put this bolt in and then mark this side. So you stack the deck in your favor, that you're not building in some kind of a stress riser into the part. And the first time you crack the windshield, you'll learn not to do that. So now with the 3rd bolt in and hand tight, now I can mark that accurately and burn my way through. And I'm just, again, working from the front of the windshield out to the back. Now it looks like we have, the only issue we're going to have, of course, we're going to trim some of this off and put that curve back in there. That'll be the last thing of the day. But the next thing is to get it outside in this pouring rain. I hope I don't get it all wet. Get outside and make sure everything drops into place, that we haven't created some kind of a little problem or a little clearance issue. And this will be, although it is overkill, this will be time well spent, I'm sure. Now, anytime I do a rough and dirty fit like this, I know there'll always be something I can make a little bit nicer, a little bit better. Now, as I start putting the bolts in, I can see one of the issues is, where this is, I have to bend, and I knew this was bent. I knew in the past it was bent, and this might have been, of course, contributing to our problem with the windshields that did crack already. So what I'm going to have to do, now that I've got all the bolts in and everything lines up pretty nice, I need to take it all apart and bend this, it looks like down maybe 3/4 of an inch. See, because I don't want to have stress in this. I don't want to have that part that it's got a pre-bent twist in it. And this is going to be, you know, this will probably take up the rest of the day tweaking these. And then I want to put all the bolts in and make sure everything lines up just the way I want it before I go in. And then the last thing will be to cut this off and then refinish the edges on that. But I want to do this methodically, and this kind of work takes time. You just can't rush it through. But when, as I can look over here, I know this one took just as much time. And when the parts are bent or twisted, it just adds a lot of time to it. It's really handy for tweaking parts like this is a fork tube, an old fork tube. But in this case, I have a pipe, and I only need to move it just a little bit. Now it's been quite a few little tweaks to get it this where it is. Now this is going to get trimmed off, but you can see when you move the handlebars, there's clearance for everything. Clearance for everything. It just clears, in fact. And since most of my bikes I want to have regular handlebars on, not clip-ons, well, this works for me. So we have all the clearance issues done. All of the fits are about as close as I'm going to be able to realistically get them right now. This was a pretty successful day, so far anyway. So now the next step here is just take all the bolts back out, go down, pull the tape off the windshield. We're pretty much done with that fit. And we just need to mark and trim this, which is going to make the clearance here even a little bit better. Put that curve back in with a Dremel tool. Very successful rainy day. Now, even though I'm not using it, this is a good tip. I always have a little butter tub or whatever you call it. Keep all the original, like for instance this part I'm going to use again, or I'll polish it, repolish it. All of the little switches and things that have to go back on, all of the little blind nuts that have to go back on. These are all the original parts, but as I'm putting the bike back together, I'm replacing it with brand new stainless steel stuff from Bolt Depot. Now also with these side pieces permanently attached, it makes this whole front end, the whole front part of this is a lot more rigid. And I think that's one of the things that now that we have that straightened out and we have this part more rigid and we have I hope all the bolts in the windshield lined up pretty well, and all the parts lined up well. Now the last thing is going to be, I have to take care of that piece. I have to remove the paint from it. But I don't want to take the lower parts off of the motorcycle until I fit that lower triangle piece. But I can take this apart, and I still have enough time today. I can trim that fairing and just shoot a little primer on it. And boy, I'm going to sleep good tonight knowing that's done. And knowing that it fits so nice. That's a really big upgrade. And I'm sure that part up there is laughing at me and saying, oh, well, in the end, maybe we got the last laugh. I don't know. But I do know this will make just a little bit nicer the video that we can shoot from the bike. And I'm looking at the spots inside the fairing that I'm going to try to clean up a little bit with sandpaper when I get another day like today that I need to work on this. Yeah, that's going to be, I'm really happy the way this worked out. You know, all this taking apart and putting back together and tweaking and whatever. In the end, I hope this is going to result in the body fits being really nice on this. So now the easy part. Take the windshield off again. Carefully. I don't want to scratch anything, but before I take it off, I want to mark where I want that curve to be. I can cut that with a Dremel tool inside the house, of course, and then just dress that off with sandpaper and reprime it. Even though it's raining, I can do it out in the back room. And I'm real happy that we're going to be able to use this windshield. Wow. I wasn't sure, and I have the other one sitting over there just in case. But this really isn't, I'm real happy the way this worked out. Now it actually works out great for another reason, is if all else fails and I have to use one of the other windshields, I can drill the other bolt holes in that windshield and you won't notice it. But I can't drill new holes in the fairing. So the way this worked out, I've left the back door open on this project. And sometimes a piece of fine line tape can just help you with the cut and with the finish on that. And one of the things I was going to show on this video, but I guess I don't have to, is how to get, if you do happen to scratch the windshield by mistake, how to get it out using various compounds and of course flits. But we got through without scratching at all, so I guess the best way to get scratches out of windshields is don't scratch it in the first place. But that tape helps, and that's a great tip. I hope that helps somebody avoid some ill feeling when they scratch their windshield, making it up like we're doing today, putting the holes in or whatever you have to do. That is a good tip. Now this is the end of part 20, and I hope you've enjoyed our little video. We try to share the work we do in the shop pretty much every day. And maybe you can pick up some information that you can use, or it's just fun watching us work. I'm not sure which. Anyway, but I do hope you enjoyed sharing this time with us. And thanks for watching. We're going to pick this up on step 21.